Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about, is Summoner class overhated? Now, whenever someone brings up Summoner class, it's usually saying something negative. There's never any time where people are saying good things, which is why I say, is it overhated? Because I think the community just hates on it a lot. And we're going to be seeing if that is really justifiable or is it just ridiculous. I will also go over my personal opinion later on in the video as well. And before we get started, I just want to say, please make sure to subscribe because I'm going the road to 1,000, and it'd be very nice to hit that by the end of the year. Anyways, let's get started. With the first thing I'm going to look at is balance. If a balance of a class is not good, it can make the class really mediocre, such as Ranger, where all the defense and damage is just mid, making a mid experience, and can make it overpowered like Melee, where you have high defense and high damage, which means there's really no drawbacks. And with Summoner, it's pretty interesting. Basically, it's high damage with low defense. And when I say low defense, I mean very low defense. I think this is the reason why a lot of people don't like the class, because they see the low defense and they instantly get repulsed. And also, in many of the earlier stages of progression, the damage doesn't make up for the low defense or the lack of it. Now, later in the game, the damage is great. Now, I think the reason why this balance is kind of fair in the later aspects of the game, we'll talk about early game in a second, is because you have a whip, which does high damage. You have summons, which is the main thing, because if you just use whips, it'd basically be melee. But with summons, you don't even have to use a whip and you can do damage. You can just move around and literally be AFK. Don't have to move at all for a boss fight and kill it. That is why the defense is so low, because if the defense was high, then you literally would have to not move around at all and have no setup for bosses and just sit there and tank and you would just kill it. But because of the low defense, you actually have to move around, and I think the defense is a little bit on the low side at times, but for the most part, I think it's pretty balanced in the sense that the amount of damage you can do with your summons and plus your whip, that's not even bringing in the fact that you can also inflict debuffs with your whip, which makes it balanced when you look at like melee or other classes. I think it's pretty fair. At times, not so fair, especially in the early game. The early game balance is, especially pre-hard mode, kind of lacking. The damage output is okay, and the defense is just not there. And especially when you enter pre-hard mode before you kill your first mech boss, I'm gonna be honest, it's some of the worst balance I've ever seen in this game. The amount of damage you do is lackluster at best, and I mean, let's be put simple. I mean, before you kill your first mech boss, you're stuck with the Blade Staff or the Seguin Staff. And I'm just gotta bring this up while I still can, because this is one of the major drawbacks of Summoner. This pre-hard mode stage, before you kill your first mech boss, so pre-mech. You see, you have the Seguin Staff and the Blade Staff. Those are the two options for your staffs. Now, one is very broken, but is stupidly impossible to get, and the other one is realistic to get, except it sucks. And so what ends up happening is you have this crappy armor. So, fun fact, adamantite titanium armor is not even the best for Summoner, so you don't even have that. You have this crappy like spider armor that's hard to get, and it sucks. And then you have a Blade Staff, which also sucks, and then you're expected to kill a mech boss. This is some of the worst balance you can see in the entire game. I mean, compared to every other class, you are literally just lower in stats in every scenario, every single aspect. It is unfair. But if you can manage to kill the twins or your first mech boss, and then things get slightly easier because you have access to hollow armor, as well as if you kill the twins, the optical staff, I believe it's called, which is very, very good. And basically from there, the game or progression and balance, just it's great. I'm just gonna say it, okay? But pre-hard mode and pre-mech balance is really not great. Next up, we're going to talk about enjoyability. Now, this is kind of more of an opinionated section, but I do want to bring this up because I think every class has their... It's important to rank every class based off enjoyability, as in, like, are the weapons unique? You know, it's fun to use the weapons, and I have to say this. I would say for the most part, Summoner class is probably one of the most enjoyable classes. Now, this is my opinion. The weapons, the summons, I should say, are very unique and cool. I mean, I remember when I got these tribal warfare men, I don't know what they're called, tikis? I don't know. That was probably one of the coolest feelings, knowing I had an army of tikis fighting for me. Fighting while I whip a boss to death. I mean, the idea of whipping a boss is just so cool. But then you have these tikis, or, you'll have the twins fighting for you, or, a dragon. It's like, these are really cool concepts, and it makes you feel very powerful when you command things like a dragon or tiki armor. Just a sense of power, because they do such high damage, and you control them, basically. It's just a great feeling. Which kind of outshines the low defense, especially later in the game, because the weapons are a lot cooler. Alright, the third thing we have to tackle is progression. I kind of mentioned this a little bit ago, but basically, pre-hard mode sucks. The progression in pre-hard mode is just horrendous. I mean, to get your foot in Summoner, you basically have to be a melee player or any other class before you can really get your foot into Summoner, because there's not really Summoner-friendly options in the beginning. You got Abigail, which is such a bad summon. I mean, I don't even know why they put it in the game. It's that bad. And you have the first whip you can get being the Snapthorn whip. Yes, you can buy the leather whip. I guess I kind of forgot about that, but most people are going after Snapthorn because it's actually really good. The problem with the Snapthorn, though, is it's gotten by jungle materials, which, let's be honest, why the hell are you going in the jungle ever? You don't like that place. I mean, at least I hate it. It's so deadly, right? And the fact that they put the first whip in the game you can get, besides the leather whip, in that place is stupid. It's ridiculous. But the other issue is there's just a lot of progression you kind of can just skip over. I mean, technically, pre-boss, you could get the best gear in the game for pre-hard mode. Yeah, there's no other class that's really a thing. At least as far as I can think of. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But with Summoner, all you have to do is to just kill enough segments from the Eater Worlds or destroy enough creepers from the Brain of Cthulhu, and then you're able to get a Deathbringer or whatever, the Shadow Ringer pickaxe, mine Hellstone, and then you have the best staff, and you can also mine Obsidian, and then you can get Obsidian armor. And then boom. That is ridiculous. That is stupid. Like, what? The only thing you could upgrade is the whip, and literally, Snapthorn is a pretty good whip. Like, you probably don't need a better whip. Even in Master Mode, it's something you can do. And the thing is, there's no real reward for following the progression. Like, you can get the Flink's staff armor and Flink's armor and all this random crap that I don't even know what the progression is, but it's so crappy because it doesn't give you good stuff for progression. Like, if you decide, I'm actually going to follow progression how it's supposed to be followed, and you get to Flink's armor and stuff, you're going to be sitting there grinding Flinks for the most obscure thing in the world. Because Flinks is spawned in, like, the most weird scenarios where it's like, oh, I only spawn on stone instead in ice volume instead of, a snow or ice. Anyway, that's irrelevant, okay? The point is basically, you can just skip through progression stupidly easy and have the best stuff in pre-hard mode. So, there's really no point of following progression. And even if you do, on the second boss you take down, you're gonna have the best gear. That's stupid. I mean, you could argue other classes are kind of similar, but, like, it's not to this degree. It's just ridiculous. I mean, and even Obsidian armor is considered so good that some people actually use it in pre-hard mode. So a boss that an armor set basically you can get pre-boss is so good that it can be used in early pre-hard mode and be considered good. That is ridiculous. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, I forgot, but pre-hard mode experience, Summoner is just really not that fun because, the summon slots are as low, you do okay damage, it's not great, you just kind of feel weak, and just like, why am I playing this class? Then you get to pre-hard mode. I already had this discussion about the Sagine staff and Blade staff, but I'm going to go a little more in detail because I think it needs to be covered more. you basically have no reason to mine the hard mode ores, which is kind of ridiculous to me, and you just harvest spiders for the armor set, and it's really, really annoying because spiders are very annoying, and then you have to harvest more for a special staff that literally gets outclassed by a staff like 2 seconds after. You just have to kill Queen Slime and hope you get the blade staff, and you have the best armor set, and it sucks. Just does. And then, you know, like I said earlier, you can get the Seguin staff, or Seguin, I don't know how it's called. And this thing is gotten by the Nautilus, which is so annoying, especially on Master Mode, because you are not strong enough to take this thing on. You're just simply not. But you technically can. So if you are able to fish it up and kill it successfully, which, by the way, it's fished up in a blood moon by a small chance, which is ridiculous, then you're rewarded with basically, you're skipping all the way past Planetary easily. I mean, this thing carries you pretty far. Now we're going to talk, is Summoner overhated? With all these points I've discussed, is it overhated? My answer is probably not. I think this is the best class, but they need to fix it. And I know they're not, but I'm just going to say what they should do anyways. They need to make Summoner a easier class to start off in pre-hard mode. It is pretty much crappy experience in pre-hard mode. It just is. The solution to this problem is to basically, they need to somehow rework the mechanics of pre-hard mode. Just maybe up the damage more, or I don't know. That's all I really can think of, because the main issue is the damage is just not good enough with the amount of defense you have. And in early pre-hard mode, they really need to find a better armor set, or give more defense at the bare minimum. I would even argue, make better weapons, like, make the blade staff better. I mean, this thing does 9 damage per second with buffs, 2 summon damage. Like, that's silly. That is ridiculously low. Like, I don't know, I just... Really, just certain sections of the games, they really just need to add more damage or up the defense a little bit. Like, either one would work. I would not argue that defense needs to be upped for all the whole entire playthrough, because that would make it too OP. When everyone likes Melee, and Melee is like the #1 class to go to because it's so broken, I mean, obviously Summoner is going to be looked down upon because it's got its issues. In fact, it's the only class that I think has major issues. So most people are just going to look and compare it to Summoner and say, I mean, most people are going to look at Summoner and compare it to Melee and say, oh well, it's not Melee, so they're going to just push it under the rug. And I think that's fair enough, because yeah, the flaws make it a really annoying experience. If you want to hear me rant about Melee and why it's too OP and how that's a really huge issue, click the eye in the top right corner. And I should also mention, I think if I were to rank the classes, I think Summoner would be the second worst class in the game. Ranger is worse in my opinion. The only reason why I think Summoner is even better than Ranger is mainly because how fun it is to play later in the game, in the later half. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and peace.